The text came 3 times before I even left the city. Do not be late. Important family announcement. I remember sitting in traffic on the way to my parents' house, running through possibilities in my head. Maybe my father was finally stepping back from work. Maybe they had booked some big trip they wanted to share. I pulled into the driveway with pine wreaths on every window and warm light spilling through the curtains, and I genuinely believed I was walking into a celebration. 23 family members were packed around the extended dining table, crystal glasses catching the chandelier light, the whole room smelling of cinnamon and roasted meat. What I did not know, what I could not have imagined, was that my mother had spent the past several weeks committing felony fraud, and she was about to announce it to the entire family like it was the greatest gift she had ever given. I had driven 4 hours from the city still wearing my work clothes, and I barely had time to set down the cookies I had brought before dinner was wrapping up and my mother was rising from her chair. She tapped her wine glass with the kind of theatrical precision that only comes from decades of practice, the gesture of a woman who had spent her whole life staging moments for maximum audience impact. She pulled out a leather folder, the expensive embossed kind that signals something official, something serious. My sister Cassidy was already sitting beside her with a particular smile on her face, the one she gets when something is coming her way that she did not work for. I recognized that smile immediately, and something in my chest tightened before a single word had been spoken. My mother began her speech the way she always did, with a story about struggle. Cassidy and her family had been going through a difficult time, she explained. 3 kids, mounting medical bills, a house that needed constant repairs. Her voice carried across the room with practiced warmth, and I watched heads nodding around the table. Then she pivoted. Meanwhile, she said, my other daughter has a beautiful lake house sitting empty 11 months out of the year, a property she barely uses, a property that could be doing so much more good in the right hands. I set my fork down. The lake house was not sitting empty. It had not been empty in 4 years. It was a fully managed rental property, generating $4,800 every single month, and it was the foundation of my entire retirement plan. But my mother was still talking, still opening that leather folder with ceremony, still pulling out documents with county letterhead and legal language and signature lines. My signature, apparently, already filled in. The table erupted. My Aunt Brenda had actual tears in her eyes, pressing her hand to her chest and saying how generous I was to give up something so valuable for my sister. Cassidy was already on her phone, showing cousins photos of the property. My Uncle Dwight, who had practiced small-town real estate law for 30 years and considered himself the family authority on all things legal, adjusted his glasses and announced that he had personally reviewed the documents and everything was perfectly binding. My grandmother patted my hand and told me it was the right thing to do. The room was full of warmth and applause and the kind of collective goodwill that only exists when everyone believes they are witnessing generosity. I sat very still in the middle of all of it, and I thought about the email I had received 48 hours earlier. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone without saying a word. I opened my email and found the message from my title insurance company, subject line reading urgent, fraudulent transfer attempt flagged, action required. I had known this moment was coming since Wednesday. I had spent 2 days deciding exactly how I wanted to handle it, and I had decided I wanted to handle it here, in this room, in front of every single person my mother had chosen as her audience. I looked up from my phone and said, "Actually, there is something everyone should know." The room did not go quiet all at once. It happened in waves, conversation dropping off table by table as people registered the tone of my voice. My mother's expression shifted just slightly, a small flicker behind her eyes, the look of someone who senses that something has gone wrong, but has not yet figured out what. I told them calmly that my title insurance company had contacted me 2 days ago. Someone had attempted to file a property transfer on my Lakehouse, and the county recorder's office had flagged the submission as suspicious before forwarding it to my insurance company for verification. The room had gone completely cold by the time I finished that sentence. I stood up and held out my phone so the table could see the email. The signature on the transfer documents did not match my notarized samples on file. The notary stamp belonged to a notary whose license had expired in 2019. And most critically, my title insurance policy required direct personal verification from me before any ownership change could be processed. Uncle Dwight's face had gone the color of old paper. He said the documents had looked completely legitimate. I told him they were forgeries and that the insurance company's fraud investigation team had been working with the county district attorney's office since Wednesday morning. My mother told me I was being dramatic. She said it was a misunderstanding, that I was making a scene, that this was not the time or the place. I asked her whose signature was on the transfer documents if not mine. I asked who had created the fake notary stamp. I asked who had filed false paperwork with the county recorder's office. Cassidy had stopped scrolling on her phone. She looked at my mother and said she had been told everything was legal, that I had agreed to all of it. My mother insisted that I had authorized the transfer in principle, that I simply did not remember. I told her I remembered everything, and so did the title insurance company, and so did the district attorney's office, and so did the California Department of Insurance. Then I pulled up a second email, this one from my property management company. Someone had contacted my property manager the previous week, claiming to be the new owner of the Lakehouse and requesting access to rental records, tenant information, and revenue statements. My manager had refused and called me immediately. My Aunt Brenda looked genuinely confused. She said she had thought I never used the place. I told her I used it constantly, just not the way she imagined. The property had been a fully operational rental investment for 4 years, managed professionally, generating $57,600 annually. The number landed on the table like something physical. My cousin Troy did the math out loud, working through the monthly figure and arriving at the annual total with visible disbelief. I confirmed it. The current market value of the property was $1.4 million. I had purchased it 6 years earlier for $650,000, renovated it, established it as a premium rental, and watched it grow into the most valuable asset I owned. It was not a lake house I barely used. It was my retirement fund, and my mother had tried to hand it to my sister without my knowledge or consent. My grandmother had gone very quiet. She looked at my mother with an expression I had never seen on her face before, something between recognition and grief. She said my mother had told her I had won the property in some kind of contest and had no real attachment to it. My mother tried to redirect, saying I had never properly appreciated the property. My grandmother said, very softly, that my mother had lied to her. The disappointment in those 4 words was more devastating than anything else that had happened in that room. I kept going, because the accounting had to happen now, in front of everyone, or it would never matter to anyone. For 6 years, at every single family gathering, I had been called selfish. Every Christmas, every birthday, every holiday dinner had come with some version of the same message. When are you going to think about someone other than yourself? Your sister has real responsibilities. You have so much, and you share so little. I had started to believe it. I had started feeling guilty about my savings, my investments, my career, as though building something for myself was a moral failure. I told them about the $15,000 check I had written for Cassidy's medical bills the previous year, and how my mother had called me stingy for not making it 20. I told them about co-signing for Cassidy's car the year before that, and how my mother had said I had taken too long to decide and made Cassidy feel like a charity case. I told them about 3 months ago, when my mother had asked for my property deed numbers, saying she needed them for estate planning, for adding me to her will. I had handed over that information without hesitation because she was my mother, and I trusted her. Uncle Dwight's face had moved from pale to something closer to gray. He said my mother had told him I had authorized the transfer, that I had wanted to gift the property but was too proud to do it publicly, so she was handling the paperwork on my behalf. My mother said that was essentially true, that I had authorized it in spirit. I told her that was not how property law worked, and that the district attorney's office agreed with me. I pulled up the third email, the one from my attorney. The title insurance investigation had uncovered something that reframed everything. This was not the first time my mother had attempted to transfer the property. 2 years earlier, she had tried to add Cassidy's name to the deed. The title company had rejected it for improper documentation. 18 months ago, she had attempted to establish an easement granting Cassidy access rights to the property. Also rejected. The attempt at Christmas dinner was the third. The pattern, my attorney had written, clearly established intent. Cassidy pushed back from the table and asked my mother what was happening. My mother said I had always hoarded my success while my sister struggled, and that someone had needed to balance the scales. My grandmother said, in a voice I had never heard from her before, that balancing the scales did not mean filing forged documents with the county government. I laid out what came next in plain language. The district attorney had the forged transfer documents, the fake notary stamp, and my original signature samples for forensic comparison. My title insurance company had already denied the transfer and flagged my mother's information in their fraud database. Within 2 weeks, the DA would decide on criminal charges. The potential counts included forgery, filing false documents with a government agency, identity theft, and attempted wire fraud. There was also the matter of elder abuse, because my grandmother's signature appeared on the witness line of the forged documents, and my grandmother had been in Arizona for 3 weeks. She had never signed anything. She had never even seen the documents. My grandmother put her hand over her mouth. Uncle Dwight stood up abruptly, announced he needed to speak with his own attorney, and walked straight out the front door. We heard his car start and the sound of tires on the gravel driveway. The family lawyer was gone, and my mother's expression finally showed the full weight of what she had done. I turned to Cassidy and asked her directly whether she had known the documents were forged. She was crying by then, shaking her head, saying my mother had told her I had agreed to everything, but was too embarrassed to handle it personally. She said she had genuinely believed I was finally being generous. I told her I was generous with people I trusted. I told her that for 6 years she had participated in making me feel guilty at every gathering, every phone call, every holiday, and that when my mother had offered her a $1.4 million property, she had not asked a single question about whether it was actually mine to give. She said she was sorry. I told her that maybe she had not known, but she had benefited from believing a comfortable lie, and those were not the same thing. My mother stood up then, her chair scraping hard against the floor, and told me I was going to destroy the family over a property I barely used. I told her she had destroyed the family the moment she forged my name on a legal document. I started gathering my things, and that was when my grandmother stood up and said she would like to come with me if there was room in my car. My mother called after us as we walked to the door. She said I was choosing my grandmother over my own mother after everything she had done for me. I stopped and turned back one final time. I told her that I had been financially independent since I was 22 years old. I told her she had called me selfish for buying the Lakehouse instead of contributing to Cassidy's wedding. She had called me heartless for working instead of providing free childcare. She had made me feel guilty for every success I had ever earned while quietly plotting to take the most valuable thing I owned. I told her that family was not defined by shared blood. It was defined by who showed up when blood was not enough. My grandmother had just shown up. My mother had shown up with forged documents and a felony charge. We walked out together into the cold night air, the Christmas lights on the house blinking cheerfully behind us, completely indifferent to everything that had just collapsed inside. My grandmother settled into the passenger seat with her overnight bag in the back, and she asked where we were going. I told her I had a hotel room in the city, or I could take her to her son's house in San Jose. She said the hotel sounded lovely, that we could have breakfast in the morning and talk about what came next. What came next arrived faster than either of us expected. The district attorney filed charges within 10 days, 3 felony counts, forgery, filing false documents with a government agency, and identity theft. Uncle Dwight faced conspiracy charges initially, but they were dropped after he cooperated fully and provided his communications with my mother, which confirmed she had lied to him about my authorization. My father filed for divorce within 3 weeks. It came out that this had not been the first time my mother had forged documents in the family, only the first time she had been caught. Aunt Brenda stopped speaking to her entirely. The cousins' group chat went silent. Cassidy sent long emails and voice messages asking to talk. I did not respond. Forgiveness without consequences is simply permission to try again, and I was done giving permission. My mother accepted a plea deal. 2 years of probation, restitution payments, community service, and a permanent felony on her record that she would be required to disclose on every job application, housing application, and professional license for the rest of her life. 6 months after that Christmas dinner, I am sitting on the deck of my lake house watching the water. My grandmother visits regularly now, sometimes staying for weeks at a time. She told me this morning that my mother had called again. I told her I knew. She told me I did not have to forgive her. I told her I knew that too. My title insurance company sends me a quarterly email thanking me for my vigilance in protecting my property rights. I have been told, indirectly, that my case became a training example for their fraud detection team. My tenants, a couple from Sacramento who have been coming for 3 years and send Christmas cards every December, are arriving tomorrow for a long weekend. The lake is smooth and quiet this afternoon, and the property is exactly as it has always been, mine. I think about my mother sometimes and wonder whether she understands what she actually lost. Not the probation, not the conviction. Those are just external consequences. The real loss is something simpler and more permanent. She had a daughter who would have helped her, who had already helped her, who would have continued helping her if she had simply asked. But she wanted control more than she wanted a relationship. She wanted to take rather than trust. I did not destroy my mother. I refused to let her destroy me, and I let the law do what it was designed to do. My phone buzzes on the railing beside me. It is my grandmother, texting from inside the house. Fresh coffee is ready whenever I want to come in. I stand up and brush the lake water from my hands. The property is mine. The future is mine. And the choice of who gets access to either one of those things belongs entirely to me. My mother wanted me to share. She just never understood that sharing and stealing are completely different transactions. One is built on trust, the other burns it to the ground, and no forged signature in the world can change that difference.